Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live, and today we are privileged to welcome Debbie McCrystal, who is the founder and owner of Conscious Kids Life Coaching. Driven by a deep passion to empower children to become self-aware, confident, and resilient individuals, Debbie embarked on a journey to provide them with the tools to make conscious, healthy choices. At the heart of Debbie's work is a bold mission to change the world of life coaching for children all across South Africa, and Conscious Kids Life Coaching aims to encourage children to actively engage in shaping their lives. Good evening, Debbie. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
As I mentioned, I think this is such an amazing concept, life coaching for children. I've never heard of it before, and I love that you've brought something like this to the table, because I think it's absolutely crucial for kids to be able to discover who they are, understand who they are, and also learn very important skills that only you could teach them. But can you but can you talk us through what inspired your passion for life coaching?
Sure. So for me, it's kind of went via the grapevine. But I initially studied psychology, ended up working in education for over 20 years, and as much as I believe in education and it's got its place, what I found was that a lot of kids, the fact of the matter is that when kids are struggling, they can't learn. So for me, it was kind of like going back to my roots and my passion, but just from a different angle, from my own experience, where I had been in therapy for various reasons, but I just found and then ended up in life coaching. And life coaching for me was probably more suited to my personality in terms of that it's practical, forward, future-focused skills and tools to help you manage your day-to-day life. And that just made sense for me, and kind of was like, if we're teaching this to adults, like, wouldn't it be so much better if we could teach it to kiddies, because then we were doing preventative care as opposed to sort of damage control. So I found a company in the UK, studied through them, and here I am.
I love the concept and I love the idea, because I mentioned earlier in the show is that our education system doesn't really cater to the types of skills and developmental skills that children can learn from life coaching. That can be integral parts of them becoming who they are and who they want to be. So I really love that you've decided to bring this idea to the forefront, because I think it's going to help so many parents be able to navigate teaching their children to become independent, because that's what we want for our kids. We want them to consistently achieve and get to where they want to be, but also be able to get to a point where they are independent and can make good decisions. But can you talk us through some of the services that are offered by Conscious Kids? For a lot of our viewers at home want to actually know, what are some of the services you offer, and how does it align with the mission of Conscious Kids?
So, for me, again, like you said, I think it's such an important thing to be able to teach our kiddies, because of the fact that the schools don't, they do in some ways, but these, a lot of these things are not taught in schools, and they're so essential to successful living. So what I do is I like to kind of call it like a multi-pronged approach, so I do the one-on-one coaching with kiddies. I also do, workshops in sort of larger groups for the kids as well. But then where the prongs come in is I do parent workshops as well, parent talks, and then teacher training as well, because I think, as much as teachers are taught, they're not necessarily taught how to work with the kiddies emotionally. So I kind of help from that angle as well.
I love that you mentioned that, because our kids spend so much of their time with their educators, and teachers aren't always, like you said, able to cater to those emotional needs. They teach you the practicality of teaching a subject or a particular skill, but not necessarily teaching children how to navigate emotions. And I think that's such an important thing, because I myself personally, and I think a lot of viewers at home and adults will be able to relate, that no one actually taught them how to regulate and understand their emotions. So I love that you've brought this concept to the front. But what do you feel is the biggest challenge from your experience working with teachers, working with kids and parents as well? What do you find is the biggest challenge that children are facing in this generation, particularly, these Gen Zs, these Gen Alphas who are surrounded and grew up by things like social media, the pressure of social media, being so conscious of things like what you look like and what you're wearing comparatively to older generations?
So for me, I think probably one of the biggest issues that we're facing is the fact that I think and I mean this with love, that I think what's happened is that there's a lot of parent fatigue, in the sense that parents are having, both sets of parents are having to go to work, they're working long hours, they're coming home from work and they're tired, and there's, what used, the sort of parent world, the childhood looks very different to what it used to, in the sense that, there was somebody that was at home that was, invariably putting the discipline and the boundaries and that kind of thing with the kids. Whereas now, I think because parents come home and they're tired, there's a lot of guilt that steps in the way, and there's kind of inconsistent boundaries, because they might, today they might be tired, so they might get takeaways. Tomorrow they might decide, that it's, we're going to sit down and have dinner. But the point is that it's inconsistent. And what happens, and what I'm seeing, is that because of the inconsistencies that are happening, there is a lot of anxiety in our kiddies, because boundaries equal, security. And when they don't have those boundaries, they don't know where they stand. And then you get that anxiety that's happening. And for me, that's probably one of the biggest things. And then obviously, then they've got social media just to kind of add to that already existing anxiety. Now they've got a social media where, they're looking at bodies or different, situations that might be better or different, or, whatever to theirs. But then also you've got things like Snapchat and, those sorts of things where, there's, if you're not part of the group, or you're not getting the attention that everybody else is, then there's an added sort of knock to the self-worth and that kind of thing. And I think it's kind of tiered itself, and that's where we're sitting with quite a big issue around huge anxiety issues, huge self-worth issues, and then that kind of leads into depression as well, especially in our teens.
I think of all the times in our generation for a concept such as this to exist, I think this is the perfect time. Like you said, younger children at this point in time have so many different challenges that older generations didn't experience at all. But what I also want to talk about is something I alluded to earlier, is the whole concept and the idea of learning how to manage your emotions, how to navigate your emotions, and how to also self-regulate. And that's something we don't learn as children. But can you talk us through some of your philosophies and your teaching methods in terms of your approach to teaching children how to understand their emotions and also express them in a healthy way?
Yeah, so I think, again, I think what's important for parents to understand, which, I love saying, is to understand that children do not have the executive functioning that you or I have in order to regulate and rationalize. So we do have to bear that in mind in terms of when they're having really big feelings. So as parents, first up, the job is to kind of just bear that in mind and just be a little bit patient. And second of all, to understand that kids are new to this earth, and they don't have the vocab for all the different feelings that we do. So one of the things that I love to use, which I actually stole from a guy called Mark Brackett's, which is called the mood meter, which, invariably it can start as just colors. So the kids can point to the color that they're feeling. So, if it's red for angry, or blue for sad, or yellow for happy, green for calm. But in that, then parents can then introduce more language, because you're not just angry. You can be frustrated or annoyed, or, there's varying degrees of those emotions. And once they have that, it's that his book is called Name It, or Permission to Feel. But the concept is name it, tame it, which is the idea that when you can put a word to your feelings, you're better positioned to control them. So that's one of the things that I teach. But then the other thing that I do is I teach the kids about the different parts of their brains, specifically the amygdala, which is your fight, flight, freeze part of your brain, which is where kiddies work from. Like I said, they don't have the executive functioning. So they are majority of the time living in a fight, flight, freeze state of mind. So, you can imagine that when something that is threatening, whether it's another kid at school or mom and dad coming home in a bad mood, that can wake up that extreme feeling. And so what I teach them is, I made it a little gorilla for them, but, the idea that there's this gorilla bouncing around in your head that isn't you, but it is it's a part of you that we need to learn how to manage. But also it separates them from thinking that there's something wrong with them for having these really big emotions, or, and invariably, sometimes people can say, oh, there's something wrong with you, or, why are you behaving so badly? You're so naughty. And they internalize the words naughty, horrible, and this kind of just says it's not you, it's that part of your brain, and we're going to learn how to control that. And we do that through breathing deeply and, taking a beat and those sorts of things. And that's kind of what I teach the kids.
That's incredibly interesting. Before we do let you go, please do share how our viewers at home can actually contact you and get in touch to, basically get their kids involved with your incredible services, and maybe even schools and parents who are also interested.
So you can get hold of me on Facebook and Instagram. It's Conscious Kids. South Africa's Instagram, Conscious Kids SA. Otherwise, it's www.consciouskids.co.za. Or my email is debbie@consciouskids.co.za.
Debbie, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you for opening up our perspective and actually showing us that there's so much of miscommunication that happens between children and adults, and that's why it's sometimes difficult for parents to be able to understand what their kids are feeling and what they're going through. And thank you for sharing some of your incredible philosophies and the way you actually teach children how to, yes, navigate their emotions, but also teach them confidence, things like problem skills. So thank you for sharing with us this evening. This is a really, really cool concept.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Viewers at home, that is Debbie from Conscious Kids. Now, if you haven't heard of it, you've definitely heard it here. It's all about life coaching for our little ones. It is a preventative measure so that you can allow your children the space to, yes, learn how to navigate their emotions, become more independent, more confident, and also learn critical problem solving skills. Now, this is of course something you can involve your little ones in, or if you have a school or any education facility, you can definitely contact Debbie to bring her in to basically teach either your educators or your young children on how to best navigate their emotions and also be their best selves. So do reach out to them on their social media platforms for more information. On that note, it is time for us to head over to an ad break, and we'll come right back.